Call the July 25th, 2022 meeting of the Rolesville Planning Board to order. Welcome, everybody. First item on the agenda, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this time, I would ask everybody to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Moss, if we could once again call on your services for the invocation.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight and gather on behalf of the town. We'd like to ask for your blessing over this meeting. We'd also like to ask for your guidance and direction in the decisions we make tonight. For may everything we say and do be in your name. Amen.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 27th meeting. Floor is open for any corrections or motions for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion. We approve the minutes as stated.
We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please give me an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or any opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to the regular agenda and I suspect the meat of this evening's meeting. Case PR 20-06, The Point North Phases 11, 12, 13, Preliminary Subdivision Plat Review. And Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Testing this. Mike Ellebarger, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. This is Preliminary Subdivision Plat PR 20-06. First, a vicinity map location here. The property is outlined in pink. It is just west or north, depending on your orientation, of the Rolesville 401 bypass, and it abuts the Cedar Lake and a portion of the village of Rolesville existing neighborhoods. Some project background here. Special use permit 1809 was approved in August of 2019 for the Point project, which is a much larger project than just what's seen on the screen there. It's also on the other side of the bypass, about a total of 800 dwelling units and some non-residential lots as well. And that was all originally approved in 2019. This particular preliminary plat is for what they call phases 11, 12, and 13, and these were also approved in that special use permit master plan document. We'll see that in a moment on the screen. This property is 45.39 acres, proposing just under 17 acres of open space. It was approved to allow the construction of 98 single-family homes. This preliminary plat is proposing 94 lots or single-family dwelling units, one dwelling unit per lot. Then that comes out to a density of 2.2 dwelling units per acre. Here's an excerpt from the, again, 2019 approved preliminary, PUD master plan, showing the general layout of here. The 401 bypass is on the bottom or the south area there. You see the environmental features outlined, Greenway Trail on the left side in the red dashed line, and then the access point to Genovesa Drive. There are a number of conditions from that special use permit that do apply specifically to this, quote, north area. Number one was that the preliminary plat, the application you have before you tonight, needed to come back through the site plan review process of the Unified Development Ordinance, and that shall also include an update to the traffic impact analysis, and that was done, and that is in your packet. I believe it's attachment number 4. It required that a 50-foot right-of-way from the existing Genovesa Drive must be dedicated to the town prior to construction. Given that this is the preliminary subdivision plat, that stage has not come yet. The applicant would need to do construction drawings for the subdivision infrastructure, then a final plat to record, and the anticipation is that final plats will be recorded by phase. So there's 3 phases in this project. So the first phase, which is phase 11, does include the Genovesa Drive extension, and so at that point in time, Genovesa Drive would be dedicated, but the applicant could come forth with a final plat just to dedicate the right-of-way easement really at any time after this preliminary plat should be approved. The third or final one was to provide a stub from Genovesa Drive extension that goes eastward into other undeveloped land at this time for the anticipation of a future interconnection. And that would occur, and that is stated to occur at the time that Genovesa is constructed. Here's a picture of the proposed subdivision from the plat that's in your packet. Again, showing the general lot layout, the connection drive, the environmental features, the greenways. Note there are town-dedicated 10-foot wide greenways proposed, and there are some HOA or private greenways which are identified as being 6 foot. They can be 6 foot because they would be owned and maintained by the HOA. There's also a 100-foot buffer adjacent to 401 bypass. Sorry. In the blue circle there, that's that identified future connection from Genovesa Drive to the east to undeveloped land. That was noted in one of those conditions. So very important to remember that this project and property is regulated by the Unified Development Ordinance, not the Land Development Ordinance, which was adopted last summer. So this is under the older code that the town has. And these bullets here lay out the process for reviewing a preliminary subdivision plat under the Unified Development Ordinance. It does require a quasi-judicial hearing by the town board. Staff's analysis is that through 4 iterations or submittals of this application, which began in 2020 and wrapped up earlier this spring in May, that all staff comments have been resolved, and staff does recommend that the planning board review and make a recommendation to the town board that they hold that quasi-judicial public hearing as is required under the UDO. The applicant and several of their representatives are here to speak and answer any questions that you may have of them. And we can leave a picture up here if you'd like.
Questions from the board? Okay. We've had a number of people did sign up to speak this evening. I would ask that you try to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, just so everybody has a chance to comment and the board can deliberate on recommendation. Again, we are making a recommendation for the board to consider at their quasi-judicial hearing, which would, when that's scheduled, which is just a lot like what it sounds, pretty much like being in court. So this is a good opportunity to get some input on the record. I think there's still a sign-up sheet out there. Yep. Okay. Sure. So at this time, Maria Nguyen, if you could step up and
Oops, is that me? Did I do that? There you go. Okay. Hello, my name is Maria Nguyen, and I live on 1018 Virginia Water Drive, which is not on this map, but it's pretty close by. I live in the Cedar Lake subdivision. I'm also on the board of directors of the HOA in that neighborhood. And I reached out to my neighbors yesterday, actually, so with only 1 day's notice. I had 28 neighbors respond to some questions about this development and some concerns they have. And our primary concern that I heard from my neighbors is that this development only has one entrance/exit, and that is through our existing neighborhood. I'm aware this has been discussed before. I know there's been discussion about adding an entrance or exit on Opta 401, which was denied by NCDOT, but we still have a lot of concerns about the only entrance exit coming through our neighborhood. Down Virginia Water Drive, which already has a lot of concerns about speeding at this moment. We're literally in the process of asking for additional stop signs on that street because there are so many speeding issues. We looked over the traffic impact analysis document, which estimated at least an additional around 1,000 cars being added to that drive daily. Our neighborhood right now is only about 150 homes, and this is adding almost 100 more. So it's hard for us to imagine how there could only be a minor impact on our neighborhood by almost 1,000 more homes being added every day. Cars being added every day to the road. We're also concerned about the narrow relatively narrow quality of Genovesa Drive as it is. Virginia Water Drive, it's a relatively wide road because it was intended to be this thoroughfare through our neighborhood and then through the next two neighborhoods as well. Genovesa is the same width as the other side roads in our neighborhood, which does not seem to be the appropriate width to sustain such increased traffic. We already have multiple bus stops in our neighborhood that are along Virginia Water Drive, especially by the roundabout at the front and near Genovesa Drive. It means the kids are crossing the street constantly trying to get to those bus stops, and additional traffic leaves us very concerned about their safety. Our concern about one entrance as well has to do with emergency vehicles and their ability to access the entrance and exit. If something were to happen, as we were told, there was a gas leak that happened near Genovesa Drive just a few months ago, and that area had to be shut down to fix the gas leak caused by teen coming into the area. If there was still only one entrance and exit to this upcoming neighborhood, that would affect many more neighbors who wouldn't be able to get out of their neighborhood because of a situation like that. So these are all very, I think, valid concerns my neighbors have, and we would love to have those considered. Additional entrance exit is our main priority here to lessen the effect on our neighborhood in particular, as well as making the road and the traffic situation safer for our kids, adding additional sidewalks or signage as necessary to make this safer for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Van Buren. Moving ahead to David Kodad? Kodad? Sorry.
No, it's illegal. Just say it like it's spelled. Kodada.
Kodada. Thank you.
I live on 516 Genovesa, and I'm a father of a special needs child who at times will just blatantly run out into the street with no regard. And I know, I believe she just touched on it as well. This was approved in the old, I guess, UDO. I believe the town changed the LDO to say any new neighborhood must have 2 access points or multiple access points. This neighborhood obviously doesn't. And my biggest concern is, excuse me, that the amount of traffic. I mean, we have parties, people park outside, something happens in there, there's no way a fire truck's getting through that street. I mean, we've all discussed it on the street. It's just not possible. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, I don't understand how this neighborhood can be approved by the fire board if it actually says any new subdivision has to have multiple access points, and this one has 1. Excuse me. But I do understand that it was approved under the old law, but it still can't be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Van Buren? Great.
Hey, sorry, I work West Coast hours, so I was on the phone with my boss. I am Catherine Van Buren. I live at 609 Vigo Court in Cedar Lakes. Forgive me, I'm not sure what we've touched base on, so I'll just go over the general. We've polled the neighborhood to ask what their concerns are. Heard him speaking about traffic. That was a concern. Safety is a concern. We have bus stops all up and down Virginia Water, which is a concern because we're already dealing with speeding. So the HOA currently is in the process of already asking for stop signs to help with traffic calming. So the thought of additional traffic adding to that stress for the neighborhood or the bus stops, because there's one particularly in the roundabout that once you've come around, you're at the bus stop and it's too late, right? So we know that, but if you're adding a bunch of people trying to catch traffic or get out of here, I'm concerned because the south side hasn't opened, so we have no idea what that impact is gonna look like for additional people coming in. I don't know if there's future development to expand the North Point and perhaps have additional spots where people are connecting to other parts of the village or other parts of Cedar Lake. We've had issues already with vandalism and break-ins in our neighborhood. So additional people on the other side of the easement, we don't know what that's gonna look like for security. Right now, our HOA has been focused on finances, and taking care of the pumps and the stormwater and the runoff. And so if we have additional people, standard growth is expected, the neighborhood is expected. How can we do it comfortably for our neighbors? And I don't know if it was mentioned, but when Ting came in, did they mention that? And the gas line was cut? That would have completely left that neighborhood trapped, which is scary for a plethora of reasons that the fire department understands more than me. So forgive me for being late. I think that covers the big part. I was very impressed that our neighbors, as of this morning, 92.8 were all extremely concerned. Like our graph showed, extremely concerned, not moderately, extremely. So I know that growth happens. I hope this can be done successfully for everybody, but we do appreciate everyone taking the time to understand that we see the real fears of what could come from this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Heather Swisher, excuse me.
Hi. Take that off. I'm Heather Swisher. I live at 521 Genovesa Drive. It's the absolute last lot before this division would be added. I had a couple of questions that I was hoping to have addressed. One being that my understanding is the North Carolina State Building Code Fire Prevention Code applies to all subdivisions. I actually, we as a neighborhood tried to contact the NC State Marshal. Unfortunately, the gentleman who speaks to the fire codes is on PTO. So I was hoping we could possibly have somebody speak to those regulations and how it applies to this neighborhood if it's meeting the requirements. That's a question. My other one is more of a request. So assuming everything moves forward and this goes through and gets approved as is, as someone who lives on the road that this is going to hook onto, I would like to request possibly a consideration. While I know that this neighborhood is covered under the current, the previous UDO because of the application date that they applied, there is a provision in the LDO that I would like for the town as well as the developer of this neighborhood to take into consideration just for the safety of our children. And that is, as it stated, that sidewalks shall be provided along both sides of streets. Currently, Genovesa Drive only has sidewalk on one side of the street. It is not my side of the street. And where that comes into concern for me is I do have one child and soon two in another year that have to walk to the school bus. I wish I had a map to show you. Basically, my kids have to cross Genovesa to get to the sidewalk, go all the way up the sidewalk, cross Genovesa again, and then continue up to the next street up to get to the bus stop. That means my kids are crossing a potentially much busier road twice. So, you know, I have lots of concerns about the safety of this. I was actually I was at home, I work from home, when the gas leak happened. And they shut down all of Genovesa Road. We had fire trucks completely block off the road. So it was on Genovesa, just to clarify. So there really would not have been a point of egress or ingress for that neighborhood. And it wasn't a huge impact because I forget how many houses we have on our road. I can't count in my head right now. I actually have a concussion that I'm getting over. Child jumped into my head. But that's a little smaller impact than 94 additional houses. So it is something I do want you to consider. But assuming this does move forward, my biggest point of concern is I do live there and I want to make sure my children can get to their school bus safely. So I'd like for you to at least consider possibly provisionally adding a sidewalk for my side of the street to make it safer. That's it for me. I would please, if somebody can address, though, that North Carolina State Building Code, Fire Prevention Code. I could not find it online to read it myself, and unfortunately, he was on PTO. So I would really appreciate if someone could address that.
It is not currently required in Rolesville. It is not been adopted, and this is under the former code, or the former.
I thought that was required statewide regardless of UDO.
It has not been adopted by Wake County Fire Department or by Rolesville.
Okay, I spoke to someone on the planning board and they said it's required regardless of UDO.
I don't think
Matt,
so.
I believe his name was.
I'm sorry?
Matt, I think it was Matt that called me back
From where, I'm sorry?
from your planning board department. I'm sorry, from the planning department, not the board.
It might, yeah, it is not currently part of it.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Next, Beth, were you interested in chiming in on behalf of your client, or?
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
My understanding from Mr. Alberto was that the applicant didn't need to sign up, so perhaps at the end of public comments would be appropriate for us to.
Okay. Next up is Jeff Hester. Mr. Hester?
Good evening, everybody. So definitely have heard concerns, and I want to continue to voice those particular concerns. The reason being is really a safety issue, mostly. Obviously, there's not a whole lot we can do based on what was already approved. However, I was that house where that gas leak happened. That was not my mistake. That was not even Ting's mistake. That was the gas company's mistake. So they marked it wrong. It could be a one-off. They could do it again. That does mean that these 98 homes, however many hundreds of people, would not be able to get to their place. That lasted probably like 2.5 hours.
2 or 3.
Yeah. So that's a high concern. Obviously, I would be frustrated if I was buying a home there and I couldn't get to my property. So I'm not even taking into a full context of just my opinion, but thinking of others. That's what we should do as a people, right? So we should be thinking of others outside the box. And I speak to you guys specifically as well. I know this is your job. You guys have major plans. This is something that did not come up in your plan. So I'm asking you specifically to think about those things. I'm not coming down on you, just think about those things. We are a people that should love one another. I'm a believer in Christ, and I will share the gospel with you right here tonight if I need to. However, not only is it a safety issue there, but we also have different events that happen. We've got people that have family over constantly. I do a Bible study every single week that brings anywhere from, it could be 2 families, it could be 15 families. If the street is so narrow to where a fire truck or EMS could not get through, then that's an issue. And you can't stop me from doing something like that because there's nowhere else to park in the neighborhood. There's nowhere else to park. So parking on the street is perfectly fine. But again, thinking about others, thinking about my neighbors, thinking about the new neighbors that will be there. It is an issue, and it's an issue that you guys really need to dive into, think about the well-being of everyone involved. Thank you. Yep, Jeff Hester, and that's 513 Genevesa.
I had Barbara Mercer.
Okay.
Did you sign up?
I didn't sign up, I didn't think, but okay, I can talk.
If you would like, please do.
No, I've been sitting here thinking they're missing one point. If you look on the map here, there's I don't know if it's a running creek that's there all the time, but this green area, the reason why it's not developed is because there's a ravine. We have, every night, it's over the last spring and summer, it seems like, we have flash flood warnings. If we have the flash flood with a hurricane or something like that, those people can be stranded. There is no way to evacuate. I've lived through a hurricane where they've had to actually evacuate people house by house, by boat. Those people, there's no other way. They can't get on 401. They have to go through ours. And if that one bridge is underwater, there'll be some lawsuits, I imagine, from them. So anyway, that was my only thing. It just doesn't make sense to have one place coming into that big of a neighborhood through such a small little street. And I'm sure you've seen the street because this has been a big issue. It's pretty small. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Marshall, would you please state your name and address, please?
Yes, 504 Genovesa.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mercer?
I don't think I signed up to talk either, but I do have a couple of things. It really is about the safety of the children. Jeff's children, Zets, they do not have the sidewalk on their side of the street. This street is really narrow. I mean, when there's people having friends over and there's just cars and pickup trucks parked on either side of the street, even with the wheels up on the curb a little, these curbs are like this, you could not get through there with anything big at all. So the other thing we probably need, and no one's brought this up, but I don't know if you all agree, but speed bumps may be necessary to slow people down on Virginia Water. We don't have any speed humps there, but that could be necessary.
Thank you. And Michael Elliott. Mr. Elliott?
Yeah, my name's Michael Elliott, live at 605 Vigo Court. My question was, when I was at one of these meetings several years ago and we first talked about this plan, I thought I remembered there being a exit strategy to try to get traffic out on Young Street. Was that squashed, and maybe I've just missed something along the way, because every plan that I've seen now and everything has everything going out Genovesa? If so, why was that? And we're also looking at another plan on the other side of the neighborhood that we're not discussing today, but where the city's planning on tying into the other side of the neighborhood, which will be down on Irina Court, and the 17 acres that the city bought there. That's a tremendous amount of traffic on Young Street. I'm trying to think long-term instead of short-term. This is obviously going to impact everybody in this room. But looking at the big picture in the city plan, when you kind of open your eyes to the whole thing, that's a whole lot of traffic. And the only solution that I see is multiple red lights on Young Street. And we all know what that's going to cause. I'm trying to think of how, with this 17 acres and the city building and everything else, that's going to affect our neighborhood in another 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So they're already developing the plans for that. I know we're not talking about that at this meeting, but that's going to have a huge impact on our quality of life in our neighborhood. So I hope that this board is looking at the overall big picture and not just this one segmented 90 homes. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was the last name on the list. Is there anybody else? No? Please feel free.
Mr. Chairman and Planning Board members, my name is Beth Trejos. I'm an attorney with Nelson Mullins, 4140 Park Lake Avenue, and I'm here today on behalf of Ashton Woods Homes. Ashton Woods is the owner of this property and the developer of the Point in general. As you heard from your staff, the Point is a much larger master plan community which extends to the south side of 401. I have with me today some experts who are here as a resource. Just want you to know who is here. Laura Holloman, who's a land planner with McAdams, Travis Flewitt, who's a traffic engineer with Kimley Horn, Nick Kirkland, who's a real estate appraiser, and Raymond Rinker and Bob Mishler from Ashton Woods Homes, who are, of course, the developers. As your staff indicated, and y'all probably remember, the Point Master Plan was approved by the town board in 2019, and it included this development with a site plan very close to what exists here today. Prior to that, it was also approved by the town board in 2009. This was a long-standing mixed-use development plan in the community. Streets were stubbed here, including Genovesa, to allow for this property to be developed with the understanding and expectation that access would be limited because of the coming 401 bypass. Discussed, well, this is a 94-home, single-family home community. It was originally proposed as a townhome community, but it is single-family homes, and that was what was ultimately approved in the 2019 master plan on 45.39 acres. It will be 40% open space. That's almost 17 acres of open space, including walking trails that take advantage of the existing pedestrian tunnel under 401 to connect the two segments of the point, as well as open space buffers in the environmentally sensitive areas that provide a transition between the villages and Cedar Lakes. So that's a substantial open space area. And what is being proposed is in accordance with your comprehensive plan. The 2017 comprehensive plan designates this area as mixed-use residential, and that is what the Point Master Plan is providing you with, a variety of housing types and styles, as well as an area for commercial. There was a commitment in the original, or in the 2019 approval by the town board to come back through this process and to update the traffic impact analysis. And as your staff said, that was done. The original traffic impact analysis in 2019 was prepared by Travis Lewitt with Kimley Horn. It was reviewed by the town's consulting traffic engineer. An update was prepared by Kimley Horn, and it was also reviewed and concurred with by another traffic engineer who was a consultant with the town. So plans for traffic safety and adequate traffic flow have been analyzed by at least 3 traffic engineers, in addition to your professional planning staff, the county's, along with the county staff and NCDOT who participate in the review through the TRC process. So many experts have looked at this plan and considered its safety and viability. An item that was discussed significantly during the last hearing was the ability of emergency vehicles to access the site, and that was looked at very carefully, and I'll share with you a handout which was included as a part of the analysis done by the town board. Madam Clerk, if I can approach and hand that to you. This very clearly shows that Genovesa will function well for emergency access. So I submit that to you to be, to have as a part of your record. In addition, one of the requirements of the master plan approval was not only the extension of Genovesa to provide a connection to this project, but a stub to the east, to the Rabel property, which is as of yet undeveloped, which would provide an opportunity for future interconnection, so that there would be 2 access points from the Genovesa extension in this neighborhood, and that would connect to Marbella. So when the Rabel property develops, there will be a requirement for connection there as well, providing a second access point. And that's sort of how interconnection is created and provided, is by stubbing out, just as was done here, and when adjacent properties develop, additional connections are made. And so, that is the plan here. This area has been planned to develop as a part of a mixed-use community for many years. The subdivision plan has been reviewed by experts in all disciplines in the town staff. I would say this is the most reviewed project the town has considered, given the 2009 approval, the 2019 approval, and coming back to you here today. So, we're meeting all of the requirements that the town board put on the project when it was approved in 2019, and we would ask for your support of the Point North neighborhood. Our full team is here to answer any questions you might have We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I talk, I guess, with the traffic analysis person first? So, and I'm asking this question, one, because I think a lot of words have been said about being experts. I want to make sure that I understand from a non-expert mindset, when you are developing the plan to determine the traffic analysis, does it take into account a 2 to 5 mile radius outside of the neighborhood? Because when I think of traffic analysis, especially with this one in particular, and I bring this up in particular because this connects to another neighborhood. So when it connects to another neighborhood, do you do the research on what the traffic analysis impact statement, recommendation, amendment was for that neighborhood and then add it to your community? Because what it sounds like is happening is you're adding to a community. And so just wanted to ask that question first, and then I have some follow-up after that.
Yes, so I think where you're getting to, I think this will answer your question, but if not,
Okay.
just ask me again.
Yes, sir.
So the study area included, we analyzed not just Virginia Water at Genovesa. We went Virginia Water over at Young Street, then Virginia Water at Genovesa, Virginia Water at the roundabout at Redford Place, and then Main Street at Redford Place to the north, and then the Virginia Water extension over to Main Street to the west.
Okay.
As part of this update, the master TIA encompassed many more intersections to the south as part of the holistic process. But then, in addition, so with this update, just for the northern section, we performed new traffic counts at all of those existing locations. We added 2.5% ambient growth, and then we also included approved development traffic for the, bear with me here, from the Redford Place mixed-use development, the Jonesville Road townhome development, as well as the Callis Falls to the south, obviously the southern portion of the Point development, the Point portion on the south side of 401, and the Walbrook development to the west. So we included a number of other developments that are approved, that are happening within the town. So not just looking at the neighborhood itself, but the surrounding development that's happening in the area.
Is that what you're talking about on this side where it says the summary, right before the summary recommendations, you have committed improvements by others? Is that the section we're
Correct.
talking
Those are
about?
being done by the Walbrook development.
And so that was really my question. I'm trying to understand, how do you take those numbers and develop or be able to give a full answer? Is it by average? Is it by, you get kind of where I'm going? Are you taking those numbers that you got from the extra list? Let's say I think you have on here, the Virginia Water Drive Extension, Walbrook Access K. Are you taking those numbers and then adding your numbers and then averaging the amount to come to your numbers to determine how much traffic? Because what it sounds like is there's only one street that it sounds like, and I want to make sure I'm clear with kind of what's happening. There's only one street. So if we have that one street, when you're doing your traffic analysis, you're taking in the ones that you have that you're trying to build, and then you have the street that already has a number of people, that already has a traffic pattern. Are you averaging? Because it doesn't sound like it should be averaged, it sounds like it should be added.
Yes.
So I want to make sure I'm clear with that part.
So the way it works, we perform traffic counts. I'll take the intersection of Virginia Water and Genovesa for an example.
Okay.
We counted the traffic that is there today,
Okay.
added background growth on top of that, any traffic from those other developments that will be using Virginia Water or Genovesa, added that on top, and then generated the traffic projected for this site and added that.
Okay.
So they're adding on top
So
of each other.
there is an addition, not an average.
Correct.
That's my question. So, and because your traffic analysis, and you might be able to answer this question, but you might not, how do you determine stop signs? I think I heard speed humps. When does that come into play? If I know I just added, I think your percentages, if you have 100 new homes, you're saying 250 new residents. out of the 250 residents, I don't, like I said, I'm not an expert in traffic analysis, and I want to make sure I'm just kind of going through numbers. When does the process start to say, okay, it's now time to add an extra stop sign, or it's time to add a hump? And I think that was some of the questions that I heard from the audience, is understanding or knowing, is there a certain rule that comes into play, and then there's, or is there just based on your analysis as experts? Now we know we've added an extra 150 cars on this one street. Do we add speed humps now? Do we add stop signs? How is that developed? And that might not be a question for you. I'm just.
Part of it is.
Okay.
So to address speeds, that's when we use things like speed humps. Looking at are people speeding, you would perform a speed study where you would put down tubes, those black tubes that you see across the road, and it measures how quickly, you put two in succession and it figures out how fast people are going over them. And if people are speeding, that's when you'd look at things like speed humps. Stop signs, we do not use to calm traffic.
Okay.
We do not use them to address speed. The reason is they are used as a capacity measure and to balance delays, and I'll get into that more in a second.
Okay.
The issue is, like if you put a four-way stop at Virginia Water and Genovesa today, people going down Virginia Water would hardly ever see a vehicle on Genovesa, and it's possible that people would just start ignoring that stop sign, or they would roll through it, not really come to a complete stop, which actually creates a less safe condition than if you don't have the stop sign at all. Because you think people are, if you're on the side street, you're expecting someone to stop and they don't, then that's when you pull out and get hit.
Okay.
Because the people on Virginia Water hardly ever see someone coming off Genovesa, so they just roll through it on a daily basis.
Okay.
And that's dangerous.
Okay.
So in this case, I did not recommend a four-way stop because the delays on Genovesa are very low. They're projected to continue to be low even after build out of this development. We look at all-way stops in situations where the volumes are balanced on multiple approaches. With the additional traffic here, we could consider a four-way stop. I'm still inclined not to recommend one just because the volumes are so low and the delays don't really call for one. If the delays were longer, that's when we would start looking at adding stop signs.
I'm gonna go back to some of the things that you said. You said and again, not expert and maybe can't get everything right, but there are some procedures and some measures that you do for speed humps.
Correct.
That's after the fact.
Yes.
So we won't know about whether we need a speed hump until 6 months, a year after you've built? I mean, what's the timeline? How will we know that we don't need speed? I mean, you're talking about 6 months has passed and now many people have now been hurt. Are you basing it on the accidents? You said you put but that's after a fact. That's not and please answer, anyone who can.
And so one of the things I just sort of wanted to add in is the purpose of the traffic impact analysis is to determine the impact of the homes that are coming on street capacity.
I understand that.
So to be sure that improvements are made to address the impact of this project.
I understand that.
We don't, generally speaking, Travis, you jump in, look at speeds. So, whether people are speeding or not speeding is not something that's typically addressed in a traffic impact analysis.
And so who addresses that? So who is the expert on that? Is that person here today too?
That is generally not one of the items that are considered as a part of a development. So what you're looking at.
So when you're developing, you're saying, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, so I want to make sure I hear you first.
So what you're looking at is capacity of roadways, not the actions of people that are, not controlled by any of us, unfortunately. So this is.
No, I understand that, but you're saying you're building 100 more people into a community. And so I just want to make sure I'm clear with that. And you're saying as part of building 100 more plots, neighbors, houses, however that looks, you're saying as part of that, a developer does not go into the consideration of whether we have stop signs?
You were asking about speeding.
Both, I'm asking about both. I'm sorry,
So
I missed
I'm
that
sorry.
question.
I was just jumping in on the speeding element.
Okay.
That's not something that's typically analyzed.
Okay, and I think he answered that part for me, because I think I figured out that it was more of an after effect. But my question more is, when you start, and that's because, and I think this planning board knows I'm really a person about traffic analysis, because it affects the whole Rolesville, not one community. And I hear this continual, they bring us to the board, they bring a lot of new neighborhoods and a lot of new developments, and I keep hearing the same numbers when it comes to traffic analysis impact. It keeps coming to the same numbers, and I'm starting to try to figure out that Rolesville, that if you build, and this is my simple, and I'm born in the 80s, so my math is gonna be real simple. I can't talk about the new math and all this traffic analysis. I'm not an expert. I have one expert job. I'm an attorney. There's only, to ask me about the law, I can help you. But I do know addition. And so when I hear that I'm getting 100 new houses, for me, that sounds like 250 new people. That's my calculation, but I'll do, if I had to do your calculation, if I have 100 new people, at least one person in that house has a car. So let me just say 100 new cars. But I'm putting my 100 new cars into a neighborhood that already had 100 people. So that's now 200 new cars. That's just my simple application. I mean, not, because I know you have probably done everything as an expert to understand all of these calculations, but what I don't hear is neighborhood B, C, D, E also have 100. So that's now 500, 600, 700 new cars, or older cars plus another 100 cars. And then we're saying that that this traffic analysis does not need to add an extra street, or, because that's how we get to an extra street, right? If I'm clear with how traffic analysis impact determines a new street, it determines stop signs, it determines what do we need to add. And so I'm always trying to understand, just because I'm building this small little neighborhood, I'm only responsible for my small little neighborhood. And that's why I asked my first question was, how far out do you go in your determination? Because Rolesville is built, and we want it to grow. We have I think this planning board will probably, and I can only speak for myself, let me say, but I believe the planning board, we all have the same desire for it to grow, but we want it to grow safely, and we want it to grow not in a huge, we wanted to grow in increments, I'll say that. And we have to develop those increments. I think we just had a meeting a couple of months ago about how do we begin to develop in increments, meaning we don't have a whole entire, and so that's where my concern comes from. And I don't hear that and I don't hear that today. And I can only tell you from what I've heard. I read through the traffic analysis impact, and I read through all the things that were built out. And I know that a lot of this was done prior to, and then you guys done a great job of coming back and redoing it. But I don't feel like I still am confident that you all have fully encompassed the growth of Rolesville. Let me say it that way. I think that's my best way to say that. And that's for you not to answer or answer. I'm just making my opinion.
Maybe the scope.
Yeah, I think we have done our best to coordinate with town staff to identify the developments that are coming, the growth that is happening in Rolesville, and account for that as part of this study. Traffic studies are cumulative. They build upon each other. The next development will have to take this into account. The next one will have to take that one into account. So we can only include what we know about, and then we include a background factor to account for some things we don't know about, but there's no way we can count for all of the things we don't know about yet.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I think I do have my next questions. I'm really going to ask my questions around what some of the neighbors, I don't know if you guys have had a neighborhood meeting with Geneva Drive. It sounds like they have a lot of concerns. And so I want to know what are your thoughts? Have you guys talked about this, and what are your answers? Because they had some very valid questions. I think one of them, I think the speed humps, I think he answered that that's an after the after plan. But I do want to talk about, and we heard the story, and it was true to all of us. We heard the impact of the gas leak. And that was only one way in, and I can't imagine it being 100 people stuck or 250 people stuck. So what is the solution, or what have you guys talked about since that?
So, this is the subdivision approval of a master plan that was approved or amended in 2019. So there was a number of hearings and neighborhood meetings and conversations that took place in 2019 that resulted in the plan that's before you.
Okay.
And included among the changes were a wholesale product change from townhomes to single-family homes, a significant reduction in the number of homes that would be planned in this area. The original proposal was for more, and in fact, the master plan that was approved in 2009, as I recall, had more townhomes here as well. There was a commitment to provide a stub so that when the property to the east, the Rabel property develops, that there will be an opportunity for a connection and a different access point through Marbella, which kind of runs parallel to Genovesa. There was also some discussions with NCDOT about the opportunity for an access point from the bypass. And the answer there was no. That it is a restricted access road. We learned our lesson with Business 401 and other places throughout the state, and it serves the citizens of North Carolina to have a limited access highway. So there is a lot that has been done in this plan that's before you today to address the community concerns.
Well, I don't hear the concern, and maybe I don't, and I think they're here because they want to understand the answer to their question is if, and I think we cannot tell what's going to happen tomorrow, and you guys, when you filed this and when you went through all the process of developing this, that situation hadn't happened yet. And so now we know that it's happened. We're here today. It happened less than, I want to say that was 6 months. How long ago was that when that? That's been less than a year. I'll say less than a year. Less than a year. And so what have the company or the builders taken into consideration, knowing that something of that nature now has happened?
So the policy of interconnection, which exists in the town and in communities surrounding the town, is one that we understand is designed to address those issues. That is the very issue the policy is designed to address. We meet the policy in terms of single access point. We meet the requirements. So the rule and regulation that's been put in place by the experts, we comply with. If when the Villages at Rolesville was developed, or when Cedar Lakes was developed, additional points of interconnection were made to this property, we would be in a different circumstance. But at that time, there was a decision not to do it, and so this property has limited opportunities for access. We are maximizing those access points in accordance with the law.
Okay, and I'm always a person of layman terms, because so are you saying there is only going to be one access for additional 250 feet?
Until the Rabel property develops, yes, there will be only one point of access.
Okay. They asked about sidewalks on both sides. Is that, and I know that you're going into another neighborhood, and so you don't have any rights over a new neighborhood. But in your community, I tried to look at the, okay.
Laura Hallman, answer that.
Thank you, yes. And I saw some greenery too, so I do want, can you talk about some of your greenery? And I saw some of that in your development, if you could talk about that as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and chairman. My name is Laura Hallman with McAdams Company. For the record, that's located at 1 Glenwood Avenue, Suite 201 in Raleigh. So thank you very much for your question. To answer it, this subdivision will have sidewalks on both sides. I know it's a little hard to see at that scale, but it will have two sidewalks. Obviously, when it, as you mentioned, excellent point. Obviously, the existing Cedar Lakes was built under previous subdivision standards that only required one sidewalk on one side, but this one will have both.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have like 1,000 more questions. I didn't hear the question, I'm sorry.
Will your company add the sidewalk on Genovesa that already exists so that these kids won't have to cross the street twice?
I'll ask the question for him because I know. It sounds like you're asking, will there be an extra sidewalk added to Genovesa Genovesa?
That is not a part of our plan. We are not offering off-site improvements, but we are meeting the new code requirements for our project.
Thank you.
And Ms. Pryor, I think you had comments about wanting me to speak to the perimeter
Yes, but-
buffers.
Yes,
Is that
I was
correct?
trying to I've asked 1,000 questions, kind of took over the meeting, so I wanted to be respectful to the other members that I've had, but I did have questions about your greenery as well.
Okay, I'll just go over that, and then if I can clarify things, please let me know. So adjacent to Highway 401, we're providing the required 100-foot Type B landscape buffer. 100 foot's the largest buffer that the town requires adjacent to highways and interstates, and of course it's perfectly understandable against 401 of this size. We also have a tributary of Harris Creek there shown. It's not a main. It's not a main, what I would call a perennial or critical area, so it's called a tributary. So the Neuse River buffer is 50 feet there, and as part of that, that's completely undisturbed. We are showing no lots or stormwater measures within that stream buffer, and also within that is where our 30-foot Type B landscape buffer is, and that's that you can see kind of adjacent. On the other side of the stream buffer here is also where that 30-foot Type B comes into play. Obviously, that would be in addition to that undisturbed stream buffer that's adjacent to the proposed home. So you've got the proposed homes, 50-foot undisturbed stream buffer, and you've got some open space that we're not disturbing, and then we're also committing to that 30-foot Type B perimeter buffer there where we share that adjacent property line there. So we've really got a large transition area between these proposed single-family lots and the existing single-family lots to the north and west of us.
Go right in. So I want to address this drawing, so I'm not sure who is here. Is anybody here from Withers Ravenel?
No, sir. That was the engineer at the prior project, at the 2019 approval, and that was an exhibit that was a part of the 2019 review process.
So I have a question and I'd like to answer. So I believe it was Mr. Hester who had the gas leak and said he sometimes has up to 15 guests. So this drawing shows what it looks like, this red line, this fire truck having to weave in and out. So my question is, if one or both sides of the street are full of vehicles, would this fire truck be able to get down and pass, unlike this line right here? I think I heard there were parties, there were a lot of children, and so this looks like less cars than what they described already there.
And if you look, there's a big rectangular picture. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit the button. There's this big rectangular picture and a smaller colored picture, and then below it is a rendering of the street width. And you can see there that a fire truck can fit between two cars on the street.
When we get a fire truck come through, we can line it up. Seriously, it's not gonna work. I'm telling you, it's not gonna work. That means that everybody, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. I really apologize. I'm passionate about this. I think you would be passionate if it was your street. If everybody, let's say you have a truck, if everybody's not parked in somebody's grass, there's no way a fire truck's getting down there. No way. And we could bring a fire truck in. I will call the fire department and ask them if they will do us that favor, if you guys want to come out and see it.
It was blocked once before when I went into labor, and I had to ask people to move to get through to go.
There's no way.
This rendering also shows two sidewalks
which we do not have 2 sidewalks, so it's already been correct on that. And I also suspect it's incorrect on the street.
So again, take everything into
Okay.
consideration.
Yeah, if anybody else would like to sign up for comments, we can do that a little bit afterwards. But right now, we're still considering this, and actually, I do have at some point, I hope that the firefighter on our board might weigh in on the merits of this particular figure, but. So, Donnie, if you could?
Yeah, no, so like I say, what this picture is showing is our ladder truck, which is the largest truck that we have for responding to residential fires. That truck's 48 feet long. So it is width-wise, yeah, it's around 11 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood, but yeah. So it's, and I'm trying to look at this picture, and I do recall seeing this before, but as somebody mentioned, the sidewalks, I mean, what is the proposed width of this, 27? Is that 27 feet on that?
27 feet back to back on a 50-foot right-of-way.
So 27-foot wide paved road? What's the width of the road?
How much of back and curb on each side?
I believe it's 26.
Yeah, it's 27 is what it says. It's to the edge of curb. 27 feet to the edge of curb to edge of curb.
Curb to curb, yeah.
What about the old part of the thing? How wide is it?
And this was the existing Genovesa. The analysis was done on the existing Genovesa.
Okay. So what, the new?
Is the same.
The
It's
new
the
is
same.
still, it's all 27 feet from the
The
time
new-
they come off Virginia Water, it's gonna be
So-
27 feet.
The new street standard that the town requires the Genovesa extension to be built to is the same as the existing. So it's not as if the existing street doesn't meet town standards. It does.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what the specs are on our trucks, so I mean, if we have an issue with streets in town, then we have to, if that's an issue, we have to contact PD and maybe have them start applying some more reinforcements or some sort of action on street parking for emergency vehicle access, but typically don't have to have that.
And so, just a question for you then. So how, when you measure, I guess, a car, what's the measurement of a car? Is it, I know we're down here talking about it 6 feet maybe for the width?
Well, most standards roads are what, 10 feet?
Yeah.
I know Falls and News Road is narrowed down to like 9 feet or something. It's pretty, Wake Forest Road, but I think normally it's around 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say, I always think of it like a standard parking spot. So a parking spot is 9 feet wide, and you've got a little bit of room on each side if you park in a.
You said like so you're saying, so it's 9 feet and 9 feet, that's enough for 2 cars, and if it's only 27, that gives you 10, 29 more feet for another car to come down, is that what you're saying? Just so I'm, make sure I'm, understand what you're saying. So it's 9 feet, you said this, it's 27 feet total.
I'm saying, well, a parking spot is designed to open up your car and not hit another car.
Yeah.
So
About 9 feet.
A car is narrower than a 9-foot width parking stall.
So at least 7 feet, you think, maybe a car? So we got 7 feet and 7 feet, so we're at 14. So we got, for the fire truck, maybe a little bit.
I mean, there's no question, you're going to have to be mindful about that.
13 feet left.
I think an interesting point that was brought up tonight that hasn't been touched on is, there's traffic calming. Speeding is a concern. Folks drive faster the wider the street is. So when you have residential collectors built to this, what I would call a manageable width for residential subdivisions, the reason that they're done that way and not at major thoroughfares is to provide natural traffic calming.
And I understand that. And I think where my biggest concern is I know that, you said you got the approval back in 2019. And, you know, that's the hard part about not building and kind of, I'm always concerned why it takes 5 years or so to begin to build. And I understand it got cold, got all these things you got to go through in processes.
Well, I would also say the application for this was, there was a condition that development couldn't start until September of 2021, and the application for this was filed in 2020,
Okay.
the year following. But because of COVID and other things, it took a while for the town to process it.
Yeah,
So then,
of course.
So,
Yeah, and that's the hard part because things have happened and things have changed, and you know, whether we like to say it or not, but then something comes up, and as I said, my biggest concern is just really, I was here when we found out about the gas leak, and that was a really big deal for us as a person that lives in Rolesville, as well as a house, you know, just thinking about a one-way street. And so it was a really big deal for me. Not one-way street, but a street, place that only has a one-way in and out. And so, so that's where my biggest concern come from the most. I mean, I hear, of course, the neighborhood and, you know, their concerns. And so I guess my other question, one other thing that you didn't, that wasn't talked about, that was their question, was, I think there was a ravine or a creek. Has that been thought about, or what's in process for that? I think I heard you start talking about it as well.
Yep.
Actually, I've got a question related to the creek. I was wondering what was the rain event that culverts were designed for?
I believe the stormwater control measures are designed to the 25-year storm, which is those are reviewed by Wake County. So as part of, if this were to move forward, it has to, am I speaking out of turn? Okay, great, thank you. So that's something that has to be verified with our stormwater control, because of course, as we all know, we have to prove through black and white math, no matter what kind of math we're using, the calculations that we have to demonstrate that our post-development runoff and our pre-development runoff are the same.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I'm not asking about runoff. I'm asking about the stream crossing itself. Just for safety of preserving the crossing, preventing a repeat of what happened to 401 north of here. How much water, or what kind of rain event was the crossing designed to be able to safely handle?
And that's where you see on the layout, there's a proposed stormwater control measure in this area. Right. Can you see that stormwater SCM O right there? Can everyone see my cursor? So that's picking up 3 acres of runoff area, including the existing runoff from Genovesa. So we've got that strategically placed to capture that runoff, specifically with that crossing.
I understand that, but considering that this channel is going to be capturing rain from up to 401, and I think there's a culvert under the bypass going across the other side. And sorry, Beth, you had to have known I was going to ask this. What kind of storm can we expect that crossing to handle without collapsing or without water damming up significantly upstream? And how many inches per hour, or how many inches per 24-hour period? Presumably, some worst-case scenario storm was used as the model, and then looking at what's going to be feeding into this channel overall, not just what's coming off of this development and development next to it, but what's the total flow in that channel expected to be that these culverts could handle?
Sure. I understand your question.
Okay.
I think the issue that I'm having is it's a construction drawing level question at a preliminary plat stage. So we've determined that the sizes of the 3 SEMs can handle the runoff and meet both the state and local standards that we're required to meet. Can I tell you point by point, the calculation method in the table? No.
I think just to get back to his question about the culvert size, but it will be designed to certain criteria.
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us what those criteria would be?
I'm not the project engineer.
Okay. All right. But I'm assuming would it be a Wake County standard or a typical DOT style standard, or are they kind of one and the same?
They're one and the same. So the state regulates it and that's something that's reviewed and determined. There's the NCDOT, of course, has their culvert standards that have been updated over the years. The state's well aware of that. They make the same rules for everybody, whether they're public or private, and everyone has to follow the same rules.
I do have one more question. Backing up a little bit, this may be for Beth or the traffic engineer. Going back to the access points on 401, I know you said that DOT had denied an additional access point, but I noticed on the tax records to the northeast, there are 2 more stubs into, I think, the Rabel property, and then to the southeast, there's another stub that's very close to 401. Do any of those have any possibilities of connecting out to the bypass, or is that something that was asked to DOT?
There is not going to be any additional access to the bypass. They were very adamant on that point.
Okay. All right.
But there is a stub to the Rabel property, so that when it does develop, it will make that other connection. And the street name is escaping me, but, so there will be a second access point, Marbella.
Will the, well, I guess there hasn't been a plan for the Rabel property yet submitted.
Not that I'm aware of, but, I guess if there are no questions, the one thing I would say in closing is that this is a little bit different than the typical case that comes before you, because it is one that has already been approved and it's moving forward as a part of a master plan within that framework. And I think y'all know when it gets to the town board, it's quasi judicial, but here, just legislative. But the standard is a little bit different. And, we would appreciate your support. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. If you could come up to the podium again and give your name again.
Jeff Hester, and again, that's 513 Genovesa Drive. Just a general question because of where this looks like it's moving. I just want to be aware of what happens in terms of blasting, because we already have the impact from the south side, and I've had pictures and picture frames fall off the wall and things like that. So I want to know what will be in place for if we have issues that mess with our foundation or something like that. So just wondering if anybody's here to answer those questions. And was that clear enough? Yeah.
I think we heard you. I think that's very highly regulated, and we will be going through the permitting process, and we will meet all of the permitting requirements.
Okay, the usual seismometer deployment and all that, and imagine
Everything we're required to
pictures.
do, I will not say that I know what is required, but we will meet all of the requirements.
Okay. Sorry, a relatively newer person in the back, if you could come up and give your name.
Hello, my name's Caitlin Camacho. I live on 508 Genovesa Drive. I've got a few points that I want to highlight, just take a few minutes. First is I'm probably one of the few people in this room who can say I'm born and raised in Rolesville. and I'm happy to live here. My entire life, moved away for a couple years for college, but was excited to come back, and now I'm raising my own family here. Love this town, love everything about it, and I'm very happy to see it grow. I'm looking forward to the growth that is coming to Rolesville. I'm excited about what's happening on Main Street. Looks really cool. All of that sounds great, but I just want to highlight that I think we need to be very mindful that the growth is smart growth, not just growth for the sake of growth and cramming in as many homes as we can into every open space that's left in Rolesville, which to a certain extent kind of does seem like that's what's happening here. And based on everything they've said, it sounds like they're really focused on meeting the bare minimum requirements and not much going above and beyond, and making sure that they're really adding to Rolesville and making Rolesville a better place, as much as they're concerned with meeting the bare minimum requirements so that they can build the maximum amount of houses that they would be permitted to build in this area. We kind of mentioned out of order, unfortunately, before this street diagram that was passed out. I would just like to call out, this is extremely deceiving. I live on Genovesa Drive, obviously very familiar with that road. This depiction makes it look much wider than it is. I've already kind of called out that the diagram squared down here shows 2 sidewalks, which we obviously only have 1 sidewalk, so it's already incorrect in that manner. I think that either the car sizes in this bottom diagram are being understated. Maybe they're smart cars, I don't know. But I can tell you, pretty much any weekday, if you visit Genovesa Drive, you'll see a lawn care company parked on the street with a big trailer with lots of lawn mowers. And even just one car trying to pass that, you have to be very mindful and drive by very slowly to get around that, let alone a larger vehicle, not even a fire truck, just a large wide truck. You'd probably have to be driving in grass to get around some of the lawn maintenance services that we have on our street. So I would invite you in your free time, it's not that far away, please drive by Genovesa Drive, visit it for yourself. I can guarantee you there will probably be at least 1 car parked on the street, and you can see for yourself what type of width is left over if there's any street parking at all. And the third point that I'd like to call out is I've lived in the home on Genovesa since 2018. So when the discussions were happening in 2019, I was here at all of those meetings too and speaking at those meetings as well. And I just want to call out that me and I think some of my neighbors would agree with me that we felt very cheated in those meetings, in the quasi-hearing that we had in 2019. They came prepared with experts to speak. We had no idea that we needed to hire experts to speak. We were basically not permitted to speak during those hearings because none of us are considered experts. So it was basically a one-side argument. We were not able to rebut anything because we were completely unprepared for that. Hence why it was approved, in my opinion, because we did not have an opportunity to hire our own experts or have anybody else kind of counter their argument. So I felt very cheated in 2019, and if we do get an opportunity to kind of go through that again, I hope that we would get a chance to, plead our case and not just rely on their paid experts.
And actually, this is a good time to bring it up. The next step for this would be the same type of process as the last time, quasi-judicial. A few people have mentioned that it's the difference between the old UDO and the new LDO, and one of the efforts with the new version, with the new ordinance, is to try to get away from that as much as possible. And that's one reason why we're taking a little extra time tonight to try to give people an opportunity to speak and at least get recorded on the record, because the same kind of criteria is going to apply when the town board reviews this.
That was all for my comments. Thank you for your time.
I just have one more.
If you could give your name
I will.
again, please.
It's Barbara Mercer at 504 Genovesa. What's wrong? He's looking at me like I've done something wrong. The only thing I would like to add to this is for you to consider what this small street, dump trucks, excavation trucks, coming down with no regulation. It could happen any time of day. Little kids can be skateboarding or riding their bicycles or anything like that, and here comes the dump truck. We know that the fire trucks are going to be looking out for our safety. I don't know that we can say that about a dump truck or excavation. And I also know, following them down the highway, they're not always the most careful or the slowest. So that's just, make sure you think about, they're thinking about, you know, the people who live there and the traffic. I'm thinking about the process. It's probably at least a 2-year process to develop that. 3 years of construction traffic on that one little street.
Ma'am?
Mr. Chairman, are we limiting comments still to 3 minutes, or
Say again?
are we limiting comments to 3 minutes still?
Let's try
Okay.
to keep, if you can help me. Thanks.
Heather Swisher, 521 Genovesa. I just wanted to add 2 anecdotes, I think, that kind of back up my safety concerns about having one entrance. One being actually when I went into labor with my second child, my neighbor Tara, her house was being built and the construction vehicles actually, it was one vehicle, completely blocked the road. We actually had to ask them to move so I could go to the hospital. So just kind of speaking again to that width issue, I was completely blocked, water broke, need to go. Thankfully, they were really kind about it. The other anecdote I'd like to share, rain. Actually, during one of the rainstorms, my husband and I actually went and checked out that creek, and it is something they should definitely be very concerned with. It gets rapids when it's raining. It is, the way Cedar Lakes is, it's actually a down sweep to that creek from my property, from my next door neighbor. All of our properties sweep down. So all of our water flows straight into there, and it gets crazy. It overflows its banks. I have a video of it somewhere, but I wish they could have addressed that. I understand they don't do that at this level, but with that being the only entrance, it is very scary. We are seeing more and more events where the rain is at these high levels. It does worry me a lot about whether or not those people could lose their entrance and exit. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Catherine Van Buren, 609 Vigo Court. I do not live on Genovesa, but I am on the HOA, and I can answer some of the questions that came up because I've been going through this process. From what I was told, the town of Rolesville does not prohibit or doesn't allow speed humps or speed bumps for EMS regulations, so our only option was stop signs. And we did take into consideration where we would put stop signs, and we had chosen Genovesa and Marbella, which I'm hearing is another street that will connect, so that's really exciting. We want to put those stop signs in because as you come down Virginia Water, which the other side on the village, they have multiple stop signs, so this would aesthetically make sense. As you come down and come up and you come around that bend, it is blind, so you should stop, then you should look, not run a stop sign. And then Marbella is where our pool is, so that's where everybody's crossing the street to go to the pool. So I've been working with the town and asking how the process works to request stop signs. I was told that we pay for that, the HOA has to pay for that. And if that's the case, and if we're having to add stop signs for this neighborhood or a sidewalk for the safety of the people who already live here, I think it would be well within our right to ask the new development to help contribute to that financially. Not saying 100%, but I think it should be something that is taken into consideration if we're having to add something new to make accommodations for new residents. I've zoomed this map out a little farther than what they're showing you. There is one more street in the village, Castlecombe, that is just a stop street. It's not ideal either, but it's a straight shot down from Rayford, so if EMS had to come. But the problem would be you're still crossing what looks like a creek, so you've got a bridge on both sides for this neighborhood, which could be concerning. And when they were developing the south side, which I'm sure we could all attest to, it was raining ash on us from the burning that just went unattended and unsupervised forever. And we called, but it was the NCDOT. And so they did not actually return any of our phone calls until the burning was done. And then they were like, well, it's okay, it's done now. So it actually was raining ash on our homes, and it was an issue for a long time. So if that is the same developer, they are not taking into consideration our quality of life or what's happening. So maybe that helps with some of the questions. They are correct, that street is crazy narrow. We as an HOA have been addressing street parking because this is an issue. We have filled every house and we don't have enough room to park. So we've had to make amendments to our parking rules. So putting in no parking for fire, and if we have that kind of, that's another issue that we don't know how to address. But I'm sure that's my 3 minutes, but thank you.
Any questions still outstanding from the board?
None for me.
Floor is open for motion.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the comments from the residents in the adjoining neighborhoods, but taking into consideration of this project that had been previously approved, and it does have a recommendation from staff and it meets all the requirements, I would move to recommend approval of PR 20-06 Point North Phases 11, 12, and 13 to the Town Board of Commissioners for a quasi-judicial hearing.
We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
I'll make a motion for second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of forwarding this to the town board for quasi-judicial hearing with recommendation for approval, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I oppose.
One?
It's nay.
Huh?
Is it nay?
Yeah,
My first time opposing.
okay, no
I
problem.
would say nay.
So, four recommending approval, and one opposed. And I, just for future, as we're going through LDO issues, I'm not sure if this would be part of the LDO or not, but we really need to look at on-street parking throughout town. Really, this is kind of a reminder, and it's come up before. And I doubt we'd ever have to get the ladder truck down there, but everything else is in fair play.
And I think I know you know my concerns about traffic analysis
Yes.
as well.
Thank you. And this would be going to the town board for their quasi-judicial hearing on September 6th. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
And it's,
Good evening. The
So,
brief
next up.
planning director's report for you. First, Michelle Medley obviously is not here this evening. I recommended to her that she not come tonight since she would have been sent out of the room for this case.
Usual.
And I told her this is going to be short afterwards, so I didn't think it was worth her time to come in for a moment, but she wanted to pass on a hello. Second, our June development report has some great numbers in it. I'd just like to highlight that our permits issued year-to-date total 148, and 56 of those took place in June. So June was a big month for us. And then finally, my third item for an update, LDO Round 3. Now, when I was a child, my mother said to me, your eyes are bigger than your stomach, when I would get like 5 chocolate chip cookies or something. So that was the case with LDO Round 3. My eyes were bigger than my capacity, and definitely need some more time to work on those. So I'd like to bring back a draft of LDO Round 3 to our August meeting, so August 22nd. And then following that, plan to take LDO Round 3 to a town board work session in September, so the September 20th work session. So we have some items we need to work through. Need to get your input in August, like to take it to the town board in September, and then back to you for an update for our September meeting. I think it's about the 26th. And then it would be in front of the town board for a vote on October 4th. So I just wanted to update you on that schedule. Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Town Attorney's report.
We have nothing to report. Thanks.
Hearing nothing to report. Any other business? From board? Nope. Question, did anybody hear from Jim Schwartz for tonight?
I did not hear from Jim. We heard from Davian that he would not be able to make it this evening, so I will check in with Mr. Schwartz.
Okay. Thank you. And that leaves us for adjournment. The floor is open for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, please give me an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Just checking. Thank you.